Real quick, if you're looking for a different kind of film study, check out my movie channel. The link is in the description, so you can just click on it right there. I have a Dune 2 review on there. I have a Christopher Nolan tier list, a Quentin Tarantino tier list, a lot of other fun stuff. Check it out if you want. And anyway, let's get back to your regularly scheduled video. All right, let's talk about Josh Jacobs, former Raider, now a Green Bay Packer, and it's interesting. So the Packers made the move to, as of recording this video, they still have not signed A.J. Dillon. They released Aaron Jones, and instead they're going with Josh Jacobs, the longtime Raiders standout, who, by the way, is 26 years old. Yeah, I feel like if you asked me, I would have said 30. Crazy. But let's talk about Josh Jacobs, because, 2 years ago, he was Pro Football Focus's highest graded running back. Last year, he was not. Last year, it was a pretty big dip in pretty much every statistical category, but I have a theory on why that might be. I think last year, the situation he was in was significantly worse than he's used to. A play like this, for example, where you see the blocking concept on the screen towards the left, because it's going to be a run towards the left. And as you see when this begins, right here, there is a Chiefs player who's getting around his block. And listen, it's not like Josh Jacobs has never had situations where offensive linemen would miss blocks or anything like that. I do think, though, in the past, there usually was the threat of Derek Carr in the passing game made things easier for Jacobs. And I think that without that threat for a lot of this season, well, the passing game had its moments for sure, but, again, I don't think it was quite as consistent as Jacobs was used to. I think there were more situations like this, where the lane that Jacobs wants to run through is not open. There's a Kansas City player who is in the area, and for Jacobs, his game has always been he goes through the gap that the offensive line is creating for him. As of right here, it doesn't result very well. He gets tackled, and I actually, it's interesting. I made a video comparing Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones a couple of years ago. That was just kind of like a series I was doing, which maybe I'll bring back sometimes. It's kind of fun. But in that, I kind of compared their running styles. Now, Aaron Jones loves to try to go for the home run. Jacobs always kind of trying more for a single, which, sometimes when the single isn't there means you strike out more. You're not being able to kind of make a ton happen with a bad offensive line. Luckily for Green Bay, they don't have to worry about that. Let's go over here. We'll get back to the running game in a second, but I want to talk about a couple other things. So first, we all know the Chiefs love the blitz, right? And they're showing blitz right here. And this is another, I think, positive aspect of Jacobs' game. That's going to be the player that gets completely through here for Kansas City. So that's kind of the key player to watch. And for Jacobs, ideally, he could pick it up and make the block here, right? That would be a perfect scenario for the Raiders on this play. Okay, well, let's see what happens. Well, right off the bat, you got to pick up the blitz, and Jacobs did. Picked up the blitz very quickly, which was not an easy blitz pickup, I have to say. It happened really quickly, but he still gets himself in position to be able to, make this block. At times, he's been a borderline elite at this kind of stuff. But again, just getting in position is only half the battle. And one thing that's actually kind of underrated about players as they get older, about running backs as they get older, is their inability to be able to pick up blitzes. A lot of times, guys, that's kind of the first thing that starts to go because, it is very physically demanding. But here he does, do a good job of picking up that blitz. Again, you just got to get in the guy's way, right? You don't need to block him for 5 seconds. Just give your quarterback an extra second or two, which Jacobs did on that play. So that was very good and very well done by Josh Jacobs. And also something like this where, I talked about the Raiders offense really kind of being Josh Jacobs last year through a large part of it until he got injured. This play is a good example where it's going to be a 2nd down and 5, and they're going to run a play action and try to hit Davante Adams at the top of the screen right here. When it begins, watch how every Kansas City player has moved very far in, and it was man coverage, so more were going to be doing that, but also, I think it might have been that coverage because they were, looking towards Josh Jacobs and saying, we got to make sure we stop him, so now you have a huge opening right here. O'Connell is able to make that throw, Adams makes the grab, and again, who deserves credit for that play? Well, I'd probably say number 1, Adams, number 2, O'Connell, right? Those were the guys that impacted it, clearly, but I do think that Josh Jacobs also had a pretty big impact in that play. I do. Heading over to this one, so, getting back to the running game, let's talk about something like this, which is, again, it kind of showed the negative of his kind of, hey, that's the running lane, that's where I'm going through. And I think we all know the positives of it, of, you're not going to get yourself in trouble, but also it can lead to some great runs and to some home run hitting abilities, like what we're going to see here. Jacobs is going to, take the ball. And I should mention, too, just real quick, it's not like he's someone who can't make a read and only runs where it's supposed to be on paper. I'm just saying, he's not someone who overthinks things. If there's a running lane, that's where he goes through. Is there a running lane here? Well, yeah, watch him be able to run straight through it. And again, that lack of hesitation and his ability to accelerate so well allows him to get to that next level so impactfully, and he's able to get all the way to this position where, okay, now there's only one guy to miss. And again, to hit the home run as a running back, usually it involves making a safety miss. You can't just get to this point. Is he going to make the safety miss? Well, I think you know the answer. Yes, he does. And listen, I don't know if I would say Jacobs is quite as good at this stuff as Aaron Jones. I would, kind of the comparison I've always felt is that Aaron Jones will hit more home runs, but Josh Jacobs has a higher batting average, the kind of guy where he'll get you more, turn more 4-yard runs into 8-yard runs, but Jones might turn more 15-yard runs into 50-yard runs. But that's not to say Jacobs can't hit a home run of his own, so definitely a positive thing there. And one other thing real quick is this, which is going to be just a halfback screen. Raiders love their halfback screens. The Packers like to run halfback screens, and I think that, Jacobs will be good with Green Bay with that. Watch as when O'Connell runs the play action, you see that Jacobs right here. Play seems to be working. O'Connell is going to flip it to Jacobs. Jacobs still shows off that acceleration, gets the amount of yards that he can get on a play like that. Again, just getting the yards that are on the table. That's a running back's job, and he's very good at getting the yards on the table, and he can even go above and beyond at times as well. I always feel like Jacobs' highlights aren't quite as flashy as some other players, but his value tends to be just as good as any of the other top running backs. Again, very high batting average player who will still hit the key home runs. So, and is 3 years younger than Aaron Jones. So I think that's kind of the main reason why they wanted to make this decision, which I totally understand. And I suppose it's also maybe worth mentioning that Aaron Jones, was in the last year of his deal, right? So had they just decided to stay with Jones, they wouldn't have had this opportunity, right? In theory, you're going to get more than just the one season with Josh Jacobs, whereas for Aaron Jones, even if he was still good next year, you might have more years with Jacobs. So I think that's the logic behind it, and I understand why they do it. But yeah, those are my thoughts about all of this. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts on Josh Jacobs to the Packers? Always love hearing from you, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.